Many Christians don't realize that some of the things they believe about the Bible actually come more from culture, tradition, or artwork than from Scripture itself. And while these myths might seem harmless, they can seriously distort how we see God, eternity, and even our own identity. So today, let's clear up 5 of the biggest misconceptions, starting with the popular image of Satan ruling in hell, sitting on a throne with a pitchfork as if it were his fiery kingdom. Because the truth is the Bible never describes him this way. In fact, Revelation 20 verse 10 says Satan will be thrown into the lake of fire not as a ruler, but as a prisoner. And Matthew 25 verse 41 makes it clear that hell was prepared as punishment for the devil and his angels, not as his domain, which means that right now Satan isn't in hell at all. Instead, 1 Peter 5 verse 8 tells us he roams the earth like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour, deceiving and destroying while he still can. So the reality is that Satan has no authority over hell. God alone controls eternity, and the devil's future is judgment, not kingship. The second myth many Christians believe is that when people die, they become angels, something often said at funerals with phrases like heaven gained another angel. But biblically, humans and angels are completely different orders of creation. Psalm 8 verse 5 says mankind was made a little lower than the angels. And Hebrews 1 verse 14 calls angels ministering spirits sent to serve those who will inherit salvation, meaning their purpose is to assist humanity, not to replace it. And when believers die, the Bible teaches that they go immediately into the presence of Christ. According to Philippians 1 verse 23, and at the resurrection they will be raised with glorified bodies, as 1 Corinthians 15 verse 52 describes, which is far greater than becoming angels, because redeemed humans are adopted as God's children who will reign with Christ forever. The third myth is one that almost everyone has seen in pictures. The forbidden fruit in Eden was an apple, but Genesis 3 never identifies it that way. It simply calls it fruit, and the apple connection likely came later through a Latin pun, where the word malum could mean both apple and evil, an idea that spread through European art and storytelling. Yet the true focus of the story isn't the type of fruit at all, but the act of disobedience, because Adam and Eve chose to rebel against God's clear command, deciding to trust themselves instead of him. And that rebellion is what brought sin into the world. So the real issue wasn't apples versus pears, but the human heart choosing self over God. The fourth myth ties into the Christmas story, where nativity scenes show 3 kings kneeling at the manger on the night of Jesus' birth. But Matthew 2 actually says wise men or magi came from the east with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And while there were 3 gifts, the Bible never says there were 3 men. There could have been 2, 10, or more, and they weren't kings at all, but magi, likely scholars or astrologers from Persia or Babylon, men of learning who were led by God to recognize the true king. And another surprising detail is that they didn't arrive on the night of the birth, because Matthew describes them visiting the child in a house, which suggests Jesus was no longer in a stable and may have been a toddler by the time they arrived. So while the nativity scene tradition is beloved, the biblical account is even richer, showing how God drew Gentiles from distant nations to honor his son.